Definitely an interesting day to be talking about energy in Kern County in California the morning after the election. So my name is Cheryl Scott. I am Vice President of Kern Economic Development Corporation and Executive Director of our foundation. Our next panel is Gender and the Changing Face of the Energy Industry. And as our panelists are coming up, I'd like to take just a few moments to thank our silver sponsors today. Advanced Industrial Services, Bakersfield College Foundation, CSU Bakersfield School of Business and Public Administration. CSUB has 3 tables here today, folks. Yay. California Resources Corporation, Seneca Resources, Vaquero Energy, and Western States Petroleum Association. Thank you all for your support. So I think most of you probably know the role of Kern EDC, recruiting businesses to Kern County, working with businesses that are here to help grow our economy, to diversify our economy, and to focus on creation of new jobs. Well, as in the process of recruiting businesses to Kern County and working with businesses that are already here, it's pretty clear, and studies also confirm, that businesses' number one concern before they will commit to relocating to a region is workforce. Will they be able to find people to fill the jobs they'll be creating? It's really critical that we think about that situation, because already more than 10% of high-skilled jobs in Kern County go unfilled. Now, most of those jobs fall in the realm of, as Richard mentioned earlier, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Our foundation, for the past 2 years, has been working to bridge the gap between education and business to try to grow our own workforce and to build a bigger, better talent pipeline when it comes to STEM. Now, Kern County is number 4 for STEM job creation in the nation. And the reason, of course, is the different industries we have here, such as energy. When you think about the workforce across the country, almost half of the workforce is women. But when you think about STEM jobs across the country, women only comprise 26% of the STEM jobs. And here in Kern County, the number is even smaller. Only 17% of STEM-oriented jobs in Kern County are held by women. Seems pretty obvious that if we could increase the number of girls and women studying STEM and pursuing STEM careers, then it would be a big boost to our local workforce. In terms of the local gender breakdown, about 14% of local oil and gas jobs are held by women, and that's in line with the global numbers as well. And it is a little higher in renewable energy. Only 10 to 15% of the leadership roles in the industry are held by women. So today I'd like to thank our panel for being here. These are all women who are experiencing great success in STEM-oriented careers that are directly related to the energy industry or in some way impact our local energy industry. So we thought it would be interesting to invite these ladies up and to learn about their experiences, gain some insight from what they have to say, and better understand the status of women in the local energy industry. So I'll start with a brief intro for each person, but I do encourage you to take a look at your program so you can learn a little bit more about these ladies and their background. But first we have Dulce Hernandez. Dulce is a project engineer with Chevron. Next to her is Dr. Kathleen Madden, Dean of the School of Natural Sciences, Mathematics, and Engineering at CSUB. And Karen Martinez is a licensed professional electrical engineer and president of Antrox Engineering. And Melissa Morse is the Central Valley Operations Area Leader for California Resources Corporation. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here. I'd like to start with one question for all of you. one question for all of you, and then I'll ask each of you some individual questions. So for each of you, just briefly, as I mentioned, and obviously you all work in some type of STEM position. At what point in your life did you begin to realize that you might be interested in STEM education or a STEM career? And did you have an aha moment that made you really say, yeah, that's what I want to do? Anybody?
I'll start us off. I would say in high school, I probably give some credit back to my high school days. I had the opportunity to do some job shadowing, which exposed me to potential careers in STEM, specifically computer science. My aha moment, I would attribute it to my first summer job after high school, which was via back then the STARS program with Chevron. I got the opportunity to work with various disciplines within our Kern River operations, which I think led me to see myself in a career doing facilities engineering and led me to study mechanical engineering. So that was my aha moment.
And you went to high school here in Bakersfield, right?
Bakersfield, California. I went to South High School, so my roots are in Bakersfield.
And a great example of growing our own workforce right here with Dulce. Dr. Madden?
So I don't know if I really had an aha moment. I went all the way through undergraduate, and I was a mathematics major. And it was kind of because at the time, I was always good in math and science, so I kept taking it. And when I had to declare my major, I had a lot of math, so I declared math. But then after I finished my degree, I had an experience, and what Dulce just said resonated with me because I had a chance to teach calculus for a couple of years overseas. And so that experience just completely, I knew that that's what I wanted to do then, was to teach at the college level. So I went back and got into graduate school. But I want to tell about another little moment because when I started graduate school, I started thinking I'd get a master's degree and then teach in a community college because I had enjoyed teaching calculus. But when it came to writing my qualifying exam, the head of the graduate program wrote a little note to me after I finished the exam and said something like, "You did a nice job on this exam. You should think about doing a Ph.D. program." And just the fact that he could envision me in a Ph.D. program kind of upped my sights of what I was capable of doing. So I think for me it was the opportunity to have an experience like that, an internship or a work experience, and then also the encouragement of individuals. It was the two of those things.
Great.
For myself, I didn't really have an aha moment, but it was just, I went to high school here locally at West High, and I was always interested in math and science. Those are my strong points. That's what drew me to engineering. Luckily, I had, people at school and other people in my life that encouraged me, and more than anything, it just took a lot of persistence, a lot of hard work. I just stuck it out and stayed with engineering.
I think I came to science a little bit later in my education. I was always a good student, but in high school, I was more interested in writing and the arts. When I went to college, my dad, who was an engineer, and that's how I knew engineering wasn't cool, was because my dad was one. He said, you can be an artist or a writer with a technical degree. You can't be a scientist with an English degree, which made sense. And just to sort of humor him, I took some science classes. I was really fortunate to discover geology, which was my area of study, which is technical, but it is also sort of creative. And I was hooked on that and really couldn't get enough of it as a student, and started doing some work with some local oil companies when I was at UC Santa Barbara. And I think the aha moment really came with the first paycheck, because I was making minimum wage working at the university library, and I spent a couple of weeks doing core descriptions and made a lot more money than that. So
Excellent. Melissa, while you have the microphone, I have a question for you. You have more than 25 years of experience in the energy industry. What are some of the greatest areas of change that you've seen in relation to gender in the workplace?
Well, I'll start by saying that I did a lot of odd jobs as a student in geology, and so the first few years were spread out over that, and 25 years sounds like a long time, but I started very young.
I should have prefaced with that. Right.
You know, when you talk about what's changed, you kind of have to look at what hasn't really changed, and one thing that hasn't changed much in that time is our numbers, as you went through the numbers. At CRC recently, we noticed that the percentage of women in our workforce ticked up from 19% to 20%, and we weren't sure if it was progress or just rounding that got us there. But, you know, so the number of women in the industry has stayed sort of stable, but I think the employees have changed and the companies have changed, and it's sort of a maybe chicken and the egg. I'm not sure which came first, but you know, it used to be when I worked for Exxon early in my career that, you know, the companies would say, this is our culture, and if you don't fit in, you know, you can move on because we hire so many people, we can handle the attrition. And people either sort of fit in and stuck around, or they didn't, they went somewhere else. And then I went to work for Oxy, and it was sort of a similar approach. But I think over the years, companies realized that attracting and then retaining good people is a lot less expensive than continuously recruiting people that fit your idea of what an ideal employee looks like. Mm-hmm. And I think that went a long way to provide a little more flexibility, because companies realized if they were able to bend a little bit, they could get a lot more loyalty from their employees. And you know, I think that benefited women maybe in particular, because sometimes, you know, if you're a working mother or you know, you're taking care of elderly family or whatever, all you need is just a little bit of flexibility to make something that seems impossible somewhat doable. And so I think we're evolving in that way, and I think that has been a big change, but there's probably still a lot of things that have not changed too.
Tell us a little bit about CRC's win.
So a year ago, CRC, and it goes along with what I was just saying, that companies realize that if they can meet people halfway, they can, you know, increase their retention. CRC has a few what they call employee resource groups, which are groups that cater to certain groups of employees. So we have an early career network for early career people, because we realize that if we help people find their community, they're more likely to stick around. We started an employee resource group for women employees, and you know, because we're a small part of the workforce and because we're spread all over the state, we have, you know, some women employees in far-flung offices where they're the only woman in the whole office. You know, maybe they go all day and you never see another woman. They're always the only one in a meeting or whatever. That this would help the female employees across the state build a network so that they had a support system and didn't feel like they were so isolated. And you know, it started out as a really loosely kind of organized group, but these ladies have stepped up and really made this their own. They decided that there were gaps in employee knowledge around business acumen, around what the various areas in the company do, and they set up monthly what we call power lunches, where different people from around the company present what they do, talk about business acumen, talk about building your professional brand, to sort of fill in those gaps. And this was all really pretty grassroots driven by our female employees. And several positive things have come out of this. One is it's not just for women. Men benefit from this as well. They attend the power lunches. We have several male members now as well as female members to the group. The other thing is that, you know, these ladies stepped up. They created a steering committee. They created different areas. And so there's leadership roles in this organization that women who, you know, in their day-to-day job may not have a lot of leadership opportunities are able to practice their leadership skills in the network. So it's
Great.
been very positive.
It's the Women's Interest Network. Is that
That's right. CRC win.
Dulce, I have a question for you. Tell us about your daughters, Valentina and Celeste. They're still very young, but how do you now and how do you plan to help them prepare for a future with limitless opportunities?
Loaded question. Well, I have two daughters, Valentina, age 5, and Celeste will be 4 next week. They are two very inquisitive young girls. At their age, they're just interested in everything. And so rather than dismissing it, I think my husband and I both try to really encourage that. They're interested. I mean, their questions can go from the ground with insects and plants all the way to the human anatomy. At their age, to be talking about the solar system and why have we not gone to all these other planets that we say are in the solar system. I mean, they're just very intrigued by everything around them, how things are made, how things work. As a parent, my job, aside from disciplining them, is to continue feeding that curiosity. We do a lot of projects with them. They're very young. They know I work at Chevron. They know I do a lot of projects, so they do projects at home. They do a lot of experiments. They test a lot of things, and we openly discuss their questions. I try to always take the time to not dismiss a question, but to see where it takes them, and oftentimes I'm challenged with not having the right response, but we work through those challenges. And I think just giving them that opportunity to explore with me via experiments, via having those dialogues, I think I'm helping them, motivating them, and encourage them to know that they can do anything they set their mind to. They know challenges are something that they learn from. I think at their age, they realize that when something is difficult, hey, we need to try again. So just developing that growth mindset and even at their young age, encouraging them and teaching them to be resilient, because I think oftentimes young girls tend to stop themselves from pursuing higher and tougher and more challenging things because of, we at a very young age, we aim for being perfect, for doing things right. And when we come across a barrier, we tend to just, okay, this may not be for me because it's too difficult. So just giving them that opportunity to learn from doing, not being turned away because something is difficult. I think it's kind of my way of saying you can do this. You can do anything you put your mind to. And it really doesn't stop there. I mean, I have them at home. I can embrace that opportunity. But in terms of the community, I promote STEM education. I want to see other girls in the community also reach their full potential. I think what tends to stop young kids from trying and pursuing higher achievements, it's oftentimes just they don't know what they don't know. Perhaps they're not exposed to this industry or not exposed to the opportunities that other children may be. So just I've taken it upon myself to put myself out there, to mentor. I enjoy mentoring. I enjoy sharing my experiences with kids and hopefully intriguing them to see themselves achieve something that they perhaps didn't see was in their path or was an option to them.
Thank you. One example of how Dulce is taking her commitment to young girls and their education outside of her own home is she is one of our mentors in our Button Willow Girls STEM Mentoring Project, which we have a pool of more than 50 local women who work in STEM careers, and they're mentoring 50 4th through 7th grade girls from Button Willow to encourage them to think outside of the box and to let them know about what type of careers are available to them, because children know what their teachers tell them about and they know what their parents do. But this is an opportunity for women who work in STEM, and this is an open call for any women who work in STEM who would like to be part of the Button Willow Project. It's already very fulfilling, and next Thursday we're going to the Santa Barbara Zoo, and we're going to spend some time with the zookeeper. So as you can imagine, that's a really big deal for these 50 young ladies, many of whom have never been to Santa Barbara, never been to the beach, never been to a zoo. But I digress a bit. Okay, Karen, what prompted you to pursue electrical engineering, and what led you to start your own business?
As far as electrical engineering goes, like I mentioned, I was always passionate about math and science. That led me to engineering. So then it was a question of, what type of engineering. I went to school at Santa Clara University in Silicon Valley. So, so being there at when personal computers were just coming on the market, when the Silicon Valley aspect of Silicon Valley was rising up, I was drawn to electrical engineering pretty strongly. I worked in a computer store too, and that just seeing all the products come out, all the technology, that's what really kind of attracted me to electrical engineering. But I did come back here to Kern County, which is good because as far as your question about starting my own business, I think Kern County, especially in the energy sector or really in any sector, is a place where, if you're motivated, you can start your own business and put out a good product, put out a good service, and if you're persistent, you can be successful. So I'm really glad I made that decision way back when.
How long ago was that you started your business?
It was like almost 20 years ago.
Almost 20 years ago. Wow. You guys all got started very young in your careers, didn't you? Speaking along those lines, Kathleen, I have a question for you. You were saying that you didn't always know that math or science was where you saw your career landing. But now that you've been in higher ed for more than 20 years, what have you seen in terms of the number of women studying STEM, and how are those women translating their education into STEM careers?
Well, I think there's good news and there's bad news. I think it's a work in progress. I mean, the good news, I was a mathematics major, and my memory is that in most of my classes, I was regularly the only female student, or maybe there was one other one. In a large class, maybe there was two or three. And in mathematics, I think if you look at percentage of undergraduate degrees, we've almost achieved 50-50. So that's a change over that time span. On the other hand, the other STEM fields are lagging behind a bit, and we've got a ways to go. So if you look at computer science, if you look at engineering, it's something like 20% of those degrees are for women. And those things, so it's not going to be something we're going to change quickly. It's going to be something we have to concentrate on for many decades. And we're making progress, but we're still on a long road towards really having it so that the workforce truly reflects, the 50-50 gender split.
Okay. Thank you. Melissa, you're a Gen Xer. You told me that. Yeah. And you've mentioned that the mothers of Gen Xers faced discrimination and beat it down. That perhaps left people of our generation feeling overly optimistic that gender in the workplace didn't really matter. What caused you to start thinking that maybe that did cause us to be overly optimistic? And how do you see women in the millennial generation doing things differently?
Well, so just to back up a little bit, my mom graduated from UCLA in the 1960s and with a degree in U.S. history, and she wanted to go to law school. She applied to law school at UCLA and USC, and she didn't get in. And lots of people don't get into law school, but at the time, the schools would accept the top 5% of male candidates and the top 1% of women candidates. And, maybe if the rules had been different, she might have gotten in and had a different life, whatever, right. Who knows. But that's just an example of sort of institutionalized discrimination. And my mom's generation faced that, and in the 30 years of her career from the 60s to the 90s, a lot changed for women, and a lot of that sort of institutionalized discrimination went away. And so the message to my generation was, that's gone now. You can do whatever you want. And I always believed that, and I still believe it. But I think as I went on in my career and I did whatever I wanted and never really let anyone tell me no, I looked up one day and realized that all the other women were gone. And it kind of goes back to the numbers that you were quoting. You start at birth or high school graduation or whatever, and it's half women and half men, and then you get through maybe your graduate program and there's one or two or three women, and you're the only one in the class or whatever, and then you go to work and it's less and less, and then you get into leadership and it's a minuscule amount of women, and women with profit and loss responsibility is an even smaller percentage of that. And I think it was when I came back from my first maternity leave that I realized, this is really hard, doing this job. It's pretty demanding with a baby at home, and I can't be the only woman that's ever done this. Where's my support network? And I looked around, and there wasn't anybody who had done this that I could find close to me. And so I think that was when I realized that, something's going on here. Gender does matter. Otherwise, I wouldn't be the only one here.
And what about the millennials?
And so what I've noticed about the millennial generation, and again, maybe backing up a little bit to me and my generation, is, we were kind of like, well, if I show up and I work hard, it won't matter that I'm a woman. And what I've noticed about the millennials is they're like, yeah, we're women. We're here. This is what we're going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is how this is going to go down. They're making their own rules. And, I think that's really important. And not just the women, the gentlemen as well. And, I think it's, sometimes when you say millennial, there's sort of a collective eye roll, but I think that this is going to drive our industry. This is going to change lots of industries. And it's important.
See some good news about millennials out there to the ladies in the back. Karen, you've said that working in the energy industry means keeping your eyes open to see where it's headed, then adjusting your career path to align with the most relevant projects in the industry. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. When I first started out, I worked on more like traditional petroleum projects, oil and gas, cogen. As time went on, like in the last 10 years, I've been able to diversify into new types of technology. In 2012, I was the lead electrical engineer for the first Glass Point solar steam pilot that went in Oman. That project was engineered right here in Kern County. Also, I've ventured into renewables, solar. This year, my firm completed its first biogas project. I do commercial projects, and you can see the trend there. Buildings are heading towards net zero energy. When we do parking lots, we put in EV chargers. There's always new technology coming in, and you just always have to stay on top of it.
Thanks. Kathleen, as the Dean of NSME at CSUB, you're in a unique position to influence the future of Kern County's energy workforce. And many of us in this room celebrated alongside of you when the new engineering programs were recently accredited. Congratulations. That's a really big deal for the energy industry. I know that. So now that accreditation is behind you, what's next? What's the next big step that can really impact the workforce for these folks?
Yeah, well, I would say that, let me first just give a shout out to all our majors that existed before engineering that are super important to the workforce here. We've been producing geologists for the energy industry for a long time, and biologists and computer science and mathematicians. But we're very, very excited about our 3 new engineering programs. And we have a general engineering program, an electrical engineering program, and a computer engineering program. And 5 years ago, when we started these programs, we didn't have any students in them, and now we have something like 660 majors in engineering. Wow. So we feel like this is going to be a really important pipeline for the community. We feel like these programs are only going to grow with the ABET accreditation. For those of you that don't know, ABET is an international accrediting board, and it's quite a rigorous process that you have to go through to get this accreditation. So the fact that we have it now is going to even make our programs even that much more attractive. We're looking to grow those programs. The next capital project for our campus has been prioritized to be a new building for engineering, and we're currently in fundraising for that, so that's going to give us the space and the labs that we need to continue to grow and to continue to offer the high quality education that we're doing now. We have been focused sort of on getting through ABET, but with the good news last summer, we've now started the conversations about where might we go next, what might be our next majors. And I feel like CSUB in general and engineering in particular, just such an important resource for our region. Our students come from Kern County in large part, the majority of them. There's a great deal of diversity, ethnically and socioeconomic diversity as well, but our students have roots in the community and they stay in the community. So, you know, if we can develop a strong pipeline of engineers, this is really going to help all the STEM industries here. So we feel very good about where we're going with that.
Well, we're happy to see it. Ladies, we're out of time. I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I'm sure that these folks will be around if you have any other questions for them. They certainly are a wealth of information, I know that.